It's the appointed time and there is a quorum. Let's get started with the meeting. There will be 3 sessions today to continue scrutinizing the items on the agenda. After the first session, we'll take a break for 5 minutes, and then the second session will start at 10:35, and after that, we will take a break of 15 minutes. The third session will end at 2:50 p.m. and if needed, I will extend the meeting time by 15 minutes. A reminder to members, if you have a direct or indirect pecuniary interest in the matters discussed today, please, in accordance with ROP 83A, declare that your interest before you speak. And also, ROP 84 has to do with the voting in relation to direct pecuniary interest. Okay, FCR 2017-18-1. This is to ask the FC to approve a commitment to inject $5.45 million as equity from the Capital Investment Fund to the Hong Kong International Theme Parks Limited to support an expansion and development plan at the Phase 1 site of the Hong Kong Disneyland Resort. The panel has held 3 meetings for 3 hours to discuss the proposal. The FC has held 4 meetings lasting 8 hours, and 41 members have spoken 118 times on the subject, and the government has provided supplementary papers to the FC. I'd like to remind members that your questions have to be directly related to the content of their paper. Please don't repeat the points you have made and others have made. If you have issues on wider policy issues, please raise them at other occasions. I must declare again that I am an independent non-executive director of the Bank of East Asia, and attending officials include Mr. Greg So, Secretary for CED, and his team. Mr. Ronald Chan, 5 minutes. Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. I have worked as a bank. I have worked in the loan sections and syndicated loan sections, so I would like to share a few things with you here. What will happen if we don't have the capital injection? And I think that it will fold up sooner or later. And members said that they don't want this to happen. They say that it will be like Lai Yun amusement park. And some members have asked what will happen to Disneyland if there is no capital injection. I am sure that there should be some internal projection of such a scenario. This is what we call a base case scenario. This must have been done within the company. So I hope that the government and Disney company can share information on the base case scenario to give us the full picture so that we understand what will happen if there is no capital injection, so that we can have a clearer picture. Second point, on this capital injection requested this time, nobody can foresee or foretell the consequences of having the capital injection. Now, 10 years ago, there was the individual visitor scheme, and then thereafter there has been a reduction in the number of mainland visitors. So there have been fluctuations. So when we do the consortium loan, then we can make projections. Some colleagues, well, I have dealt with commercial cases more often in the past. We should have regard not only about commercial results, we also have to be mindful about the benefits to be brought to the society as a whole. So we should look at these 2 aspects. Some members also mentioned, can we have the options of issuing bonds and also taking out loans instead of capital injection? Even if we want to take out a loan or issue bonds, we need the shareholders to provide guarantee. Whether it's the government or the Disney company, they have to provide guarantee for the loan. So it's a matter of whether it's giving out the capital now or sometime later. I guess that why is it that issuing bonds and taking out a loan is not preferred? Because they have to bear certain interests irrespective of the outcome. So on the surface, the books will not look too good. There will be, say, an interest of $100 million or $200 million in interest in a year. So the accounts will look very bad. So perhaps the government can tell us whether it is the reason why taking a loan is not preferred. Now, whether the deal that we have struck with the Disney is the best deal, whether we have made the best out of the current situation, I think the government can make public certain information on the process of negotiation. Of course, commercial secret should not be divulged. How many times have we tried to bargain with them? 5 times, 6 times, or what? That can help us understand whether the government has done its best to try to arrive the best deals. So that's my second question. A third question, I don't think there is or rather, I think the government should do its best. I mean, there are certain things it can do without having to negotiate with the Disney company. For example, the 60 hectares in the phase 2, with pending the Disney company making use of the site, can the government come up with certain options of the use of the land that can facilitate our consideration of the requests? Some members also talked about the relaxing the height restriction. I don't agree with members saying that there are a lot of benefits with that. That's not the case. Now, there have already been existing buildings, 2 to 3 stories. These cannot be demolished to increase, to build some other buildings with higher heights. I don't believe that can be done. So what can we do given the existing circumstances and also the constraints? Mr. Ronick Chen. So do you want the Secretary to give a response? Yes, please, Secretary. We are very concerned about the questions raised. You said you've given replies many times to similar questions, but the replies are not detailed enough. So please give us specific answers. What have you done, and whether this is a bad deal? Yes, thank you. I have mentioned many times that we are mindful of the overall interest, and that is we have a benefit of 38.5 billion over a 40-year operation, and that means that we have a IRRs of 23.2% and 24.3% respectively over a 20-year and 40-year operation period. And Mr. Ronnie Chan is right in pointing out that if we have to take out a loan, then that will involve an interest of around 200 million to 300 million in interest annually. So that's not desirable. So a preferable approach is capital injection. So we have done some risk sensitivity test. If there is a drop in attendance of 15%, what will happen in 20-year and 40-year? The net economic benefits is 31.6 billion and 14.7 billion dollars in the 40-year and 20-year period. So we think this is a worthwhile project. You mentioned about the base case scenario. The added economic benefits, and that's well, without capital injection, what will happen to Disneyland? Can I defer to Mr. Lau, the managing director?
So I want to give a view from the business perspective. Very simple. When we have an asset that's 11 years old, over time, attractions will get old. The content in which we attract guests in the park will over time be less relevant. There'll be more attractive content out there and competitiveness. Yesterday we talked about there are other parks, other venues, other things that would attract people to come. So over time, the competitiveness goes down, the attractiveness of the park goes down, the assets age, and naturally it would be difficult to attract new guests. So over time, as guests stagnate in terms of attendance, or worse yet, in the long run, it declines, it impacts revenue. So that is a challenge to any business, from a growth perspective. You become stagnant over time. There's, no longer a growth trajectory. Yesterday, we also talked about the lack of revenue opportunity. There are good opportunities in the future with better infrastructure coming to Hong Kong. And if we don't take advantage of those revenue opportunities by offering new content so that there's something to market. This is a area and a market that always stresses newness. What is the new thing for me that I can come to the park to do? So if there's no longer any newness, new content, there's less to market. And so it's very difficult for the business to attract new guests and attract guests who have come once or twice before to keep coming again. So over time, you can imagine the attendance will over time become stagnant or go down. And that's what impacts the business in the long run.
好啦，嗱，時間夠咁大，因為陳振英議員有撳咗。
Mr. Ronnie Chan has pressed this button again. I said, how did you start your negotiation with Disney? And in your negotiation process, you have been able to achieve something. So is the governor willing to tell us the negotiation process, how it's like? In your negotiation process, did you believe that you would be able to get more done? How many rounds of negotiation have been there? Secretary, have you done your very best to get the best for Hong Kong? Well, this is a very protracted negotiation process. Colleagues in the CEDB have negotiated many times with the Disney company, and we have tried to come up with the best deal for Hong Kong. Of course, we have to also be mindful of the overall tourist support measures. I talk about IRR of 5.3%. That's for the project itself. And Mr. Abraham Shak also mentioned something about the IRR in relation to railway projects. If we compare the two, then we can see that the return for the Disneyland is 23% and 24% in two scenarios. I think I and myself have done our very best to achieve the results that we are seeing today. How many hours have been spent? How many people have been involved in the negotiation? Can I defer to the Tourism Commissioner? Well, numerous times of meetings, numerous meetings. The Secretary, Permanent Secretary, myself, and other colleagues have been involved. And I can tell you that the process was very challenging, and we've done our utmost. Well, the result that we have today is not easy to come by. Mr. Chan, is there something that we can do now in terms of enhancement without having to talk to the Disneyland? Do you have any thinking on that, Secretary? Mr. Chan mentioned whether we can better use Phase 2 land in 2009. We did ask for expressions of interest from the market, but at that time nobody submitted any EOI. I think this is something that is worth pursuing further.
Okay, Alvin Young. Thank you, Chairman. I want to follow up on Jeremy Tam's question on funding in 1999. what was Disney's forecast on attendance. Now, the official's response was that there were 7 scenarios, 7 forecasts, but when we attempt to look at FCR from 99 to 2000, FCR 48, it just said that the forecast was roughly 10 million attendance. So on this point, could officials indicate in which document did you come up with 7 attendance forecasts? I'd like to defer to Choi Kin-ban, Mr. Choi. Thank you, Chairman. Back then, in 1999, in November, we issued a document. The topic was Hong Kong Disney theme park and economic forecast. We had mentioned the different level of attendance, and in Annex 7 of the paper, we had given a detailed forecast of attendance numbers. Do we have a document number for our reference? Do you have a document reference number? The document doesn't have a reference number. Okay. Regarding these 7 forecasts, I'd like to follow up. What is the lower limit and the upper ceiling of this forecast? Well, one scenario A, we had listed the forecasts. Chairman, my question is, in this Annex 7, the government's attendance forecast, the upper ceiling and lower limit, lower bound, what was the forecast? I'll give you an example. Our forecast in the figures for 2005, 5.21 million. And in 2010, the forecast was 6.96 million. That was the forecast in 1999. As I said yesterday, in 2009, we had made a revision of attendance figures. Well, why do I ask? It's because in 1999, when you sought funding for building Disney, the one forecast, the ratio of attendance figures, you had expected that 25% were Hong Kong people, but now it's 40%. So you have met your expectations and even exceeded expectations, but we see that in 6.8 million attendance, we're still losing money. Well, the logic is, the operation model of Disney, was that an error in the beginning? Even if your figures are met, they are still making a loss. That is the crux of my question. Well, because of market changes, tourist figures, adjustment of these figures is inevitable. We have to change our market strategy. Mr. Leung Yu-jung. Well, yesterday the Secretary said we're objecting just for the sake of objecting. So I don't know what grounds or analysis do you have for saying that we're objecting for the sake of objecting. But legislators also criticize that you're supporting this project just for the sake of supporting. We're not criticizing. We are providing reasoning that you're blindly supporting this project. We think that your forecast is overly optimistic. Even C.Y. Leung said forecasts are not necessarily right. And history tells us that forecasts are not necessarily accurate. And in fact, the situation is far from what you expected. And now you're telling us you're painting a rosy picture, there's a positive return. Not only attendance will go up, it will stimulate the surrounding economy. Well, just now you also said in your negotiations with Disney, you said you've come up with the best deal. But my question is, in your team, you've done your best, but could we draft a new team and come up with a better deal? And since we're only a few months away from the next government, why do we have to make a decision now? Can we wait a few more months and pass it on to the next government and have a new team come up with a better deal? So that's why I asked you yesterday, what's the urgency? Why do we have to pass this application today, and why can't we hand it over to the next government? Secretary, Chairman, this item was up for discussion in November last year. It's 22nd of April now. It's gone through 5 or 6 months. It's not a matter of whether it's urgent or not. We have brought this up a long time ago, and we want to use this time for discussion and respond to your questions. Well, no matter how long you discuss, your team will end its term soon. Why don't you think? Why can't you believe that the next term government will do a better job? Well, I'm working sincerely on this application. Well, we're not. We're talking about a time frame of 1 or 2 years. We're only a few months away from the next government term. Why don't you think the next team can do a better job? Well, we think we have an unfair, unequal contract. Why can't you pass it on to the next team? You said that you brought it up a long time ago. Well, why can't we wait a little bit extra longer? Next, Mr. Ho Zhenyin. Thank you, Chairman. I heard Leung Yu-zhong say whether we could wait till the next government term for a decision. Well, actually, when a long time before Carrie Lam got elected, she was labeled as just being serving as a monitor during the interim period. So I don't want Mr. C.Y. Leung to take it easy, and the government has not responded how many negotiations they have been engaged in. But I can tell you how many times I met with the government. I just keep telling them to negotiate better with Disney. I asked them whether it was a land reclamation. Do you remember that, Mr. Greg So? The second time I asked, could you give Hong Kong public more incentives or more discounts? It wasn't ideal. We had gave you a few proposals. You tried your best, and I cannot answer this specific question, but the government and myself and my political, well, I won't mention the other political parties and my political affiliates, but I have seen you spend some effort. When Hong Kong was competing with Singapore for Disney, I was young at the time. I was very happy. Because I didn't have to go to Japan. I could go to Disney in Hong Kong. So in the previous year, we had Mr. Leung Go-hong, could you refrain from speaking at your seat? You can talk outside. I won't speak if he's speaking. Well, he's getting more and more vociferous. Well, you can blow your top outside. Mr. Leung Go-hong, I'll have to ask you to leave. Mr. Leung Go-hong. Mr. Ho Zhenyan. Chairman, I was saying that when I was still young and I heard that Disney would land in Hong Kong, I was very happy. I had met with Disney officials, and they have done a lot of community work. Every year they give out free tickets to grassroots citizens, but a lot of the public are not aware of that. So aside from being a very a business with a limited scope, it does have a positive influence. A lot of poor kids, even if you give them a free trip to Japan or Shanghai, they can't afford that. So I think they do deserve some merit. Whether the park makes money, we shouldn't just look at the accounting. We have to look at its past, how many tourists they can attract, how they stimulate the economy. That might be a softer consideration. So I just want to voice a different opinion. Any response? I'm sorry. The economic value, the economic stimulation. I mentioned that we have a 5% return, but it also stimulates the neighboring economy. It's a range from 38 billion to 40 plus billion. The IRR is 24.3%, 24.1%. So I think the SAR or the Hong Kong public, it's worth it to purchase a dream. Well, how much does this dream cost? I think it's up to the FC to decide. Mr. Martin Liao, Chairman, there are a few points I have on the funding application. At the end of 1990, the Economic Panel, the Public Works, and the Finance Committee, there were numerous discussions, and ultimately they had approved the Disney proposal. If you look at the records, there were only 3 objections and 1 abstention. There was a almost unanimous decision. We had spent 22 plus billion, including share capital of 23 billion and a loan of 5.6 billion, has capital for land formation, and that does not include 4 billion plus of auxiliary shares, injection into the theme park as part of land development costs, and then subsequently we had also used more than 1.5 billion to resume the shipyard, the dockyard, to resume land of some 147 hectares, and we also exempted some 800 million from of MTR dividend to support the building of the Disney line. Mr. Michael Tian said that we shouldn't continue. In fact, we're already deeply mired in this project, and of course the attendance is not ideal ever since its operation, but Hong Kong has already committed a large amount of resources. So if we were to postpone or even withdraw expansion, then our previous commitment, well, even though it's not going to vanish into thin air, but it's likely that it's going to be sacrificed for it will be sacrificed without any promise of return. Hong Kong is a capitalist society with the rule of law. We also respect the contracts. So when Hong Kong government and Disney had entered into 1 year of negotiation and reached an agreement, the EXCO had also endorsed the plan and used a private agreement to grant land for phase 1. And of course there were other contracts and agreements. The situation at the time, one was they were willing partners on both sides. It's an unfair contract, but given the circumstances at the time, it was reached under those conditions.
So it should be respected. If two sides agree to revise the agreement to come up with a fairer agreement, then I welcome that. But even if we impose political pressure on them and they still can't reach a consensus on revising the agreement, we can't use that as an excuse or reason for disapproving the expansion plan. At that time, there was a financial crisis, and we definitely needed a project which could instill confidence into the economy. And the Disneyland brought positive impact then. So that's why it got the support from all political factions. Now, if some members today say that because it's an unequal treaty, then there should be opposition, then that will affect investors' confidence, and international enterprises will be mindful of this kind of political environment in Hong Kong when they consider investing in Hong Kong. So will this be conducive to Hong Kong's economic development in the future? The Tokyo Disneyland has announced spending $5.3 billion in its expansion. If we still remain complacent, then we are actually throwing the big investment in the past down the drain. So I think we should be positive and active in supporting this proposal. Mr. Charles Mock, 5 minutes. Chairman, yesterday and today I've heard what is being said here. I feel that the process of discussion is very strange and unsettling. Now, 3 parties are discussing a possible cooperation and investment agreement. One party is a government, the other is electrical, the third party is Disney company. The government is like the management team, and electrical is like the board of directors or shareholders, because you are now seeking funding and ultimate decision here. And then the Disneyland is like the partner, the other party, whether we should continue our joint venture with them. Well, if in a business, it's not the way a deal is being discussed. Of course, it's the shareholders and the board and the company discuss this first, and then the management team will talk to the partner, and then after the partner has agreed to the proposal, then it will be submitted to the board for official endorsement again. But what we're seeing here is we are having details being discussed, and the way it is openly discussed is not fair to all. The electrical is like the shareholders. We are representing the public. Apart from using this occasion to reflect our views, there is no other platform for us to discuss that with the management team, and it's also unfair to the Disney company. They have to be here, sitting here to talk about the deal. And well, for a business agreement, the other party may well say that you sort this out yourselves among the shareholders first before we are involved. So for discussions at the FC, I mean, the discussions is carried out this way all the time, including, say, discussion on the MTRC projects. Maybe, well, sometimes when the people sitting behind the government officials are the science spark, well, that is not, that's fine because they are wholly owned by the government. But you may say that that is a matter with the system. The government is under constraint, so you have to do it this way. But I think what you can do is you should first talk to all the legislators, give all the information to the board of directors. They are well informed. You get the direction and instruction from them before you go to talk to the other party. You should not say spend 20 or 30 minutes in a panel meeting and discuss it and then have the item discussed at the FC. So the whole process shows this kind of weird discussion, problematic discussion. If we talk about a commercial organization, discussions will not go on like that. So can we do it in a normal way? Let's suspend the discussion first. Have the management give all the information to the board and the shareholders so that we can have enough consensus. You don't have enough consensus now because even the pro-establishment members are not supporting you. Now, after we've got the consensus, then we can go to the partnering organization, and then when you come back later, then it will be plain sailing. This is the normal way of negotiating a business deal, and so the way you're doing it makes it impossible for the Hong Kong company to get the best out of the deal. Yes, if I swap position with Mr. Mock, then you will know that it's very difficult to get a consensus among the different political parties in the LegCo. Well, why don't you try it out first? Mr. Kenneth Leung, 3 minutes. Chairman, I declare, for the past several decades, I visited many themed parks. I understand there is a life cycle to every themed park. If you don't invest a certain time, well, for themed parks in Japan and Europe, the business dwindles and they become deserted plots. Now, there will come a day when the joint venture will end. The joint venture between the government and Disneyland. In your shareholders agreement, co-investment agreement, how is the exit clause like? Can you tell me? Maybe you don't need to invoke it now, but in the long term, say in 5-10 years down the road, you must have this company running on its own, and they don't need the support from the government. This should be the direction that and the company should be heading towards in a free market. Do you have an exit clause? Mr. Leung and myself alike have worked in the different professions, and there is certain clauses, standard clauses in commercial agreements, but because of the confidentiality requirement, I can't divulge the information. I expect that kind of answer from you, but do you have a certain period on? Can you tell us whether it's going to be valid for, say, 10 or 20 years further? Then I would be able to assess whether, say, 5 years down the road, you will still come back for another request for $5 billion. So who has the power to invoke the exit clause? Can you tell me? I don't think that at this juncture we should consider the termination provision. What we need to consider now is the economic benefits brought about by the expansion plan, and also in the relationship of the two parties in this injection exercise. I'm not asking you to exercise your termination clause. Now, say if I agree to the $5 billion, but you can't tell me whether you are going to run for, say, another 50 years, and for every 5 years, another $5 billion is needed, then I would be very worried. But then if you tell me that the $5 billion can last, say, for 10 years, and then in the next 10 years, the government can ask for a third party to purchase your shares or ask the Disneyland to buy back your shares at market value. So if that is the kind of scenario that we are seeing, then I might think differently. Now, what we should focus now is on the first phase expansion plan. Disneyland is a long-term investment project. We have also the phase 2 land as well, and if the right conditions are there for us to develop phase 2, then we may put in other arrangements in terms of financing. Mr. Yu Si Wing? There might be a drop of visitor number in the past couple of years, and the last year they have an attendance of 6.8 million, so we don't have to be over pessimistic here. I think we should discuss with the U.S. quarters of Disney, and that is in phase of the expansion of Tokyo Disneyland and also Shanghai Disneyland. Do we have any uniqueness in our attractions? And also there is a differential in the size of the 3 themed parks. So have you talked to them to try to strive for more? Commissioner, Chairman, I'd like to say this. For proposals made by the legislators, we would relate the same to the Disney company. And the proposal that we have today is the most that what Disney can offer. We know that there has been an announcement on the expansion of the Tokyo Disneyland, and we, based on Hong Kong situation, we are raising our request with the Disney company. That's what we've done. Do you know? Does the government know about the Disneyland, Tokyo Disneyland expansion plan? Mr. Lang, please don't talk in your seat. You are using up other legislators' time. Mr. Lang, let me warn you once again, please don't shout. Mr. Yu Si Wing, please continue. My question is, there's been a recent announcement of the Tokyo Disneyland's expansion plan. Does the government know about that? If you don't know about it, you should further discuss with the Disney company to try to come up with a better deal. In our negotiation process, we've been watching out for the developments in other Disneyland parks. Mr. Wu Chi, 1 minute. Many colleagues have raised many questions on what will happen without capital injection. And the MD said that your attractiveness will dwindle and it will make the operation very difficult. If you ask for money from someone in the business, you must provide the different scenarios. And if you tell me that this is the only way to do it, inject capital, increase new attractions, new rides, new themes, etc. For those who would give you the money, that's not very fair. So can I ask Mr. Lau again, tell us clearly whether you have done that kind of basic analysis for our reference. This is just a very basic information. As what Mr. Ronick Chen, the base case scenario, how come that you don't have it? How can we make a judgment without that kind of analysis? Mr. Lau, please.
I think one reference is that in 2009, when we proposed the building of 3 theme lands, For 2025, there was a projection of 7.3 million in attendance. Today, we're a little bit over 6 million, standing at 2016, 2017, hopefully. And the project itself, this expansion.
呢個擴建嘅項目啦，估計2025年呢就930萬嘅入場人次嘅，咁你相減啦，就大概係200萬啦嘅一個人次嘅流失嘅，如果唔去投資嘅話，所以呢，我哋業務遇到嘅挑戰就係當我哋冇能力去
continue to grow our revenue. To renew assets, aging assets, and not have enough content that's relevant and new to attract guests, we lose attendance. We lose the ability to cover, our resources that we need to run the park.
好啊，下一位咧，譚文豪議員1分鐘。
Mr. Jeremy Tam, looking back at your estimates from yesteryear, the Annex 7 of your document, the estimates were 9 million attendance per year, roughly 9 million per year. We now only have 6 million attendance. So some legislators say, why do you ask so many questions? Just endorse it. But if we traveled back in time, we're in 1999 now, and we say that by 2016-17, it's impossible to get to 9 million attendance. Well, I think people would have criticized us for filibustering, but that's not the case. When you sought funding back then, what was the forecast? You are far short of the 9 million attendance. That's why we have these questions. When you sought funding, the figures were wrong. And so you shouldn't be surprised when we have so many questions. Time's up, Mr. Leung Go-hong. Mr. Martindale stepped out. He said that we already committed to this project. Theresa May is seeking a Brexit. Donald Trump is repealing Obamacare. Well, does the next term of government have to succeed? Is Donald Trump an idiot? So what if he's an idiot? He got elected. Now Miss Carrie Lam is elected at 777. Mr. Martindale says that we're committed. Well, even if it's a rigged election, it's we still have a CE elected. We have spent 10 plus billion. So why can't you build the PRH? I'm not granting the funding, and you have to go back and renegotiate with Disney. Either they close down Shanghai Disney or have Shanghai Disney purchase Hong Kong Disney. Thank you, Chairman. Miss Lau Xiulai. I understand. The Vice Chairman said that it was an unequal treaty. There were historical reasons for signing that. But we're concerned, how can these provisions be changed? When will it expire? So the Secretary is not willing to answer. So we're trying to remedy the situation. We're not saying there's no value to Disney. So I looked up documents from 1999, and I found that the Hong Kong government and Disney agreed that when the share capital rate reached 5.7 billion, they should seek out a third-party investor, and within that period they had to establish some ground rules, that is, who could be an appropriate third-party investor. If we could identify a third-party investor, they have no right to objection. So our issued share capital has already exceeded 5.7 billion. Why don't we have a third-party investor? And if we look at the shareholding, it's very generous. The first 600 million, we can issue 200 million to the third party, and the second tranche is 450 million, and subsequent can be issued to the third party investor. In the last paragraph, you said that in 1999, even though there wasn't a third party investor, but you expected that in the year 2000 that you could identify some investors. We're now in 2017. I'd like to ask what is the progress? Why don't we have a third-party investor? I'd like to have Mr. Lei Kong respond. Thank you, Chairman. Well, the third-party investor, as we said before, it's an option, and introducing a third-party investor, we have to look at the accounting, whether it's appropriate to introduce a third-party investor. The Disney project, we have to look at the long-term economic benefits, and we have to see whether the goals can be aligned with our shareholders. Otherwise, the third party might not be interested. But this option is always on the table. And it has to depend on the market interests and the park's business. I want to know, have you sought out a third-party investor? Do you have any records? This is not confidential. Mr. Lee, I can say that this is an option, but we have to consider whether it's an appropriate time to introduce a third-party investor. I'd like to make an announcement. We've had discussions in the FC and panels. We had reached 12 hours of discussions. 33 legislators have spoken more than 130 times, and some people have even spoken 6 times. We have some repetitive questions. So the FC still has some 60-plus establishment and public works items. So in our remaining 2.5 months' time, we only have 2.5 months, so we have to proceed orderly, in an orderly manner. So I'll now decide that everybody will have 3 minutes speaking time, and then we will stop the question and answer and deal with the 37A motions. We have Eddie Chu, Wu Ji-wai, and Jeremy Tam. You have 1 minute each, and then you'll have 3 minutes. Eddie Chu? Chairman, I have a rule of procedure question. Mr. Leung Kok-hong, I warn you for the 3rd time. Could reset the time? I have a rule of procedure question. Yu Chong-yim, Leung Kok-hong, and I have a capital investment fund. We have a motion based on Rule 21, and I would like to ask, Chairman, how you are going to rule? Well, you know that I had requested a deadline of 5 o'clock, and I allowed it to be extended to 7:30, and I'm still working on it. I'm doing 2 things at the same time. I'm convening the meeting, and I'm handling your request, and I'm also writing out my ruling, so you need to understand that I'll make an announcement soon. We have to handle the 37A motions. Chairman, I see that we don't have representatives from Commerce and the Treasury and Finance Bureau. We'd like to ask the government for their reasoning. And you've now stopped our questioning. That's not fair. This is a document for the Finance Committee regarding our Rule 21, it's a matter of concern. The Finance and Treasury Bureau needs to respond to the three legislators' motion. We don't have time to discuss that. Well, first of all, your time's up, and second, I'd like you to understand this is the chairman's ruling. The chairman is just applying previous practice and seeing whether you have a basis for your questions. It's not addressed to you, it's addressed to the chairman. It's definitely not addressed to you. Mr. Eddie Chu, hi. Mr. Eddie Chu, if you're not going to ask your question, I am asking, can they respond why our motion is irrelevant? Because if you look at the CIF Rule 5B, I do not intend to debate. Our meeting does not deal with this matter. Mr. Eddie Chu, do you have anything else to say? My question is, please remain calm, Mr. Eddie Chu. I need to deal with other legislators' questions. Mr. Tan Ji-Chun, I object to the 3-minute question. You haven't handled Mr. Eddie Chu's question. You said you have to rule on the 37A motions. You have already made a decision. You haven't written out your ruling. That means you haven't thought it out. You haven't even decided, but you've already ruled, and you're trying to reason backwards. How can we continue? You need to understand, I intend to deal with it, but if you hand it in at 7 p.m., how can I make a ruling so fast? If you ask me, time's up. I'm gonna make a decision now. If you disagree, you can use other channels to object. I've made a ruling and I will not withdraw it. If you feel that there's no need for further questioning, then I'll have to deal with the 37A motions. Colleagues, we will continue with Mr. Eddie Chu's question. Mr. Tan Ji-Chun, please return to your seat. I warn you, Mr. Tan Ji-Chun, Mr. Leung Go, please leave the venue. Please escort them out of the venue. Please leave the venue. I've made a ruling. Please leave the venue. We adjourn 5 minutes.